Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Dragon Con Urban Fantasy Track author interview for January. And my guest this month is the wonderful Jeanne Stein, who's been a long time supporter of the track. And for that, we are very appreciative. And even before the track was there. Jeanne is best known for her Anna Strong series and the Fallen Siren series that she co-wrote. So we're going to be getting started with some questions here that I have. And if any of our viewers happen to have any, please go ahead and add them. And we will have a good time. And I promise not to keep Jeanne forever, although we could probably keep talking for a long time.
Well, you and I could talk for a long time.
That's what I mean. Yes, we could. And I don't know if people would want to come and just watch us talk about whatever. Who knows? Who knows? So my first question, and something that always interests me about authors that write in the genre, is that were you interested in fantasy and sci-fi as a child and as a young adult, or is that something that you developed a bit later in life?
Actually, I was not as a child or as a young adult. I was a mystery reader. I just read straight lots of mysteries. And Sherlock Holmes, of course, was one of my favorite of all time. It still is one of my favorite of all time series. And I guess it wasn't until the vampire kind of craze took over, and I've always liked vampires. I've always been attracted to the vampire mythos, to the vampire, life, actually. So when I had a chance to write one, I used Buffy, of course, as kind of I know, because I discovered Buffy late as well. I wasn't a Buffy watcher from the very first. I was one of those ones that would kind of roll my eyes when somebody would tell me, "Oh, you should watch Buffy," and I'd go, "Yeah, I'm going to watch something called Buffy the Vampire Slayer." But as we all know, once you start, you just it kind of infects you. You get so invested into the characters, and they become real, which is the best thing to me that can happen, either watching a television show or writing a series. If you can make your characters come alive, then it's the most wonderful thing, because it's like you're being introduced to a new person, to a new world that you get to inhabit right along with the characters. So so I came to it late. And of course, when at my first Dragon Con, there was not an urban fantasy track. And so that kind of evolved through you, which was wonderful, because then all of the writers that were kind of writing in this contemporary world with otherworldly creatures, got to kind of form a family, which is wonderful. And that's one of the hardest things I think about what's going on now, is that there are no signings. You can't go see an author that you love. People still have books coming out, but it's just being able to meet them in person and get to know them and talk to them and find out that you have things in common is just so wonderful. And we can't do that now, and that's very sad.
It is sad. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know whether I actually answered that question, but that was kind of.
No, you did. And it's actually a good segue into my next question, which is, what was your impetus to begin writing on your own? What's kind of spurred you on saying, okay, I'm gonna get going with this thing?
Okay. Well, I did enjoy writing, but I thought I was going to be a mystery writer. I thought I was going to write just straight mysteries. And actually, the first Anna Strong book started as a mystery. They were a bounty hunting duo, and there was nothing paranormal about it, or nothing.
They have a cover right here.
Very good, Carol. I like that.
Yes.
But I shouldn't be surprised because that's what makes you such a wonderful moderator.
Thank you.
So yeah, and then it's funny. I attended a romance writers local group in Denver, and there was a publisher there from actually a small press. But she said, I am really looking for vampire stories. This is something that I'm very interested in because people want them. And I was with Margie Lawson, who is a wonderful writing teacher, who kind of elbowed me and said, that book that you're writing, you could make that a vampire story very easily. And so I pitched it to the editor that was there, and she said, "Yeah, I'd like to see it." So then I had to go home and write it. I had to rewrite it because I hadn't really written it that way, but it worked. It worked, and she bought it, and then we went from there.
I was going to say, and the rest is kind of Anna Strong.
Yeah. This is
very interesting. As many years as I've known you, I had never heard that before.
Oh, I can't believe I had a story.
So, yeah. So, and now when I did show the cover for the first book in the Anna Strong series, which I'll show again because here we go. I think it would be helpful to have it in front of the camera. And so, what my question is for you, well, I have a number of questions about that series, of course, but do you have a favorite secondary or recurring character that you particularly enjoyed writing in the series? We have 10 books and a few novellas and some short stories. So is there a secondary or recurring character that you just really liked?
Well, actually, there are two, and the first one I'm going to mention was introduced in an anthology that I was in called Many Bloody Returns with Charlene Harris, and this is being re-released in a new audio edition is coming out. And her name was Sophie, and she was a witch that catered a birthday party for a very old vampire. And what happens is that this vampire was 150 years old, and the cake had 150 candles on it. And he got too close. Yeah. So he went up in flames. And she kind of, in scooping up the ashes, because they wanted to go ahead with the party, in scooping up the ashes, she started thinking, vampires live forever, and eternal life sounds pretty good, because she was getting older. She was getting on in years. I wonder what would happen if I ate some of this ash, if I mixed this ash with some of the icing. And it turns out that she actually ingested the vampire, who became like an alter ego. So he was inside her, talking to her all the time and telling her things to do. And one of the first things he wanted to do, of course, was go get his wife, who was the one who arranged for him to go up in flames. So that was
right. And have a steak dinner, as I recall. That was
yes.
Yeah, that was.
Yes. So she has appeared in other novellas and in further along in the series. And I think the second character that I had the most fun writing that I haven't done anything with, and which I wish I'd done more, was I actually introduced Vlad the Impaler, who very cool. I actually introduced him in one of the next to the last book. I have to stop and think, wasn't it? And I had, I know, and he's also in a yes, and he is also in a novella and a story that came later. But I got a lot of comments on that character. Everyone liked Vlad, and they would like to have seen more of him. So I think those two are two of the favorite characters that I had the most fun writing. They were ones that were really fun to write. And that's the wonderful thing I think about urban fantasy too, because you can make your own world. You can have characters that have been around forever and give them a new twist, and and you're off to the races. So it's fun. I may still do something with
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. And those are both very intriguing characters. And it just occurred to me that we may have some people watching this who've never read about Anna. So so I should have asked you initially to give us give us a brief synopsis of what the whole series is about, if you would.
Okay. Well, Anna Strong and her her business partner were bounty hunters. So she has always been a strong kind of kick-ass female. She was never a shrinking violet type. Well, on a job, they go after someone who turns out to be a vampire, and in the course of capturing him, he bites her. And so she turns. There's an exchange of blood because of the fight, and she wakes up in the hospital, vampire. So the crux of one of the most important things throughout the whole series is that she's now a vampire who still has a family, still has a lot of human connections that she wants to keep. They're important to her. So she has to learn to adapt to a life that she has to keep hidden, because nobody else can know that she's a vampire, because it's a secret for most humans, and yet try to remain as human try to retain her humanity. So because I thought that it was important, an important part of the vampire mythos, I thought, was needing human blood to survive. I know that a lot of times they get around that so that the protagonist doesn't seem too awful, too evil, by saying that vampires can subsist on animal blood or cow's blood or ghost blood. But I thought that didn't work. So then I had to figure out how I could get my character, how she could feed safely and not turn into the stereotypical vampire who hunts at night and prowls. And I should mention too that because my books are set in San Diego, and I could not imagine a character that couldn't go out in the sunlight in San Diego, I tweaked that mythos to say that over the centuries, vampires have adapted to sunlight, so they walk amongst us. And you can't tell a vampire from a human in most cases. So,
Beach vampires.
Pardon me?
Have beach vampires in your
Yes, yes. See, they're tan. They go out in the sun, just like everybody else. But they do require human blood. So I had to come up with a way then to let her feed safely. And I came up with a bar in Mexico where the few humans that do know about vampires are paid to be hosts. So they're not drained, but they're paid to donate whatever blood they want to donate, and it's very pleasurable. Being bitten and having blood drawn by a vampire is a very pleasurable sexual experience for humans. So that's how I overcame the fact that she doesn't have to go out and kill people to survive. So it's all, I think that's one of the most fun parts about coming up with a series and building your world is being able to make whatever rules you want. Whatever you want to do with your characters, you can do that. So anyway, so the series kind of focuses on, there's usually a human mystery and a vampire mystery in the book. There's usually something that's concerned with the vampire world, as well as something that goes on in the human world that affects her and her human family. So that's kind of what the series does. That's kind of what the series is about. I love taking I love making the locations an important part of the story. San was my home. I was raised there, so it was great fun to me to, to set it among real things so that people can find Anna's cottage if they want to. There's restaurants that I mentioned and things that I mentioned that are there. They're part of San Diego. Well, San Diego's changing so much that I think a lot of things probably aren't there anymore. But
maybe not. But they were at the time. So
exactly. Yeah. And Mission Beach is pretty much Mission Beach. So that's where she lives. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so there for people who maybe have not yet taken the plunge for Anna, there is your setup, and hopefully that will pique their interest. It's
I hope so. I really I enjoyed writing the books, and I hope people enjoy reading them. So
I think so. I from the reception I've seen you get, I believe so. Now, from your perspective, who or what would you say was Anna's greatest or most dangerous adversary?
Probably KL. I broke the vampires throughout the world into 13 different camps in their geographical regions. And the vampire that was over the Middle East name was KL, and he through many books was Anna's biggest adversary because he didn't like the idea of working for a woman. Anna, by the way, became the chosen one. She's the head of all of these, but she doesn't have, she's not a queen that sits on a throne and commands everything. She doesn't really have anything to do with the day-to-day, how these leaders, conduct their day-to-day business. But they've crossed swords many times. They've crossed swords many times. And in the last book, Paradox, it all comes to a head. But he's been, I think, her greatest foil through the series.
And that makes sense because from you never know, and you did a great job of that, of making it so that the reader and Anna herself never really know if when he's doing something nice, whether he is actually being sincere or not. So. Exactly. He's an interesting character as well, and I think you pulled that off. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, when you wrote Blood Bond, while you were writing Blood Bond, did you know that was going to be the final book in the series, at least with that publisher? We know there were. I mean, there was another book afterwards and another novella afterwards, or a couple of novellas, but. Did you know at the time that it was going to be the last one? Well, that at least was something that you could give.
Yeah. You're kind of cutting out on me. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the last one with Penguin. But there seemed to be enough interest, and Hex Publishers picked it up. So there seemed to be enough interest that I didn't want to completely close the story down. I didn't want to completely end it in case I did have a chance to come back. So, yeah.
Okay. Yes, because after Blood Bond, which I'll show again. After that, we did get. Two different novellas, one of which was set earlier in the series, though. And then we did get the Paradox.
Yes.
So that was, that was great. So that leads to my next question. Do you think that we will see Anna again in some form at some point in time?
Every once in a while, I got an idea sparks in my head, and I think, oh man, that'd be such a good Anna story, and I might just do it. I mean, everyone puts out their own stuff. Everyone's putting out their own stuff now, so who knows? If I really get involved right now, though, I have to tell you, I'm writing something entirely different.
I know, and I
And
have questions about that. We'll get to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So, but I do, yes, I do. Every once in a while, because I love the character. I mean, she's still part of me. Anna is
Oh,
still part of
sure.
me. I think
Yeah.
she will be for a long, long time, because probably forever. Because she was my first real foray into publishing, and she was well received, and I just thought she was a good character. So yeah, you may
Yeah.
see me. She may be back.
Well, I'm glad, because I know a lot of your readers will miss her if not, and I know that you probably get other questions about that. But
Yeah, I do.
so I'm asking for myself and for any of your interested or readers about the same thing. Now, and before we go on to talking about the Fallen Siren series, I did want to ask you. I was curious about your interest in Leadville, and the reason is because I've got that book too.
Yes, yes,
This has your first story that you wrote about um, the vampire Rose, but that was actually set there, and then later on in Cloud City it plays a role again, even though it's mainly spoken about. They do go there, but in any case, I'm curious where your interest in Leadville has come
well,
from.
I lived in Colorado. I lived in Denver, and we would go up to Leadville. It's a very interesting little town, because there's very little there now. But it was a booming town at one time. When I wrote The Ghost of Leadville, that was that's when it was alive. The city
Right.
the city of Leadville was alive. Now it's not much. It's a tourist stop. It's a tourist stop, but it's got the highest an airport that's the highest elevation of any other airport in the United States. I mean, I can't remember how high Leadville is, but it's up there. It's high. It's a city that's on top of the mountains.
Yeah, I
And
remember in Cloud City, Anna's pilot is excited to go there for the first time because of that. Yeah.
yes, and pilots use Leadville as a training for high altitude takeoffs and landings, because
Ah,
they can be very difficult. So yeah, but when you mentioned that, though, the Ghost of Leadville in the anthology, that Rose was another character that I really enjoyed writing. The character in that book, and the story with Doc Holliday, I
mhm.
think it's probably one of my favorite short stories that I've written. Um, so yeah, and again, that was fun, because I could take a real character and real things that happened, and and turn them into my own.
There
So
you
it's
go.
fun. Yeah.
Uh, Now, and before the Anna Strong series was completely finished, or
Yeah.
more completed, coming to an end, you did team up with another author to do the Fallen Siren series, and I have a copy of uh,
Yes.
here,
Right. Yes.
and uh, the so you were not under Jeanne Stein, but you were under S.J. Harper.
Correct.
And can you tell us a little bit about the Fallen Siren series for those
Well,
unfamiliar?
I'm really sorry that we weren't able to continue with that. But things happen in people's private lives, and sometimes it just makes it impossible to continue.
Right.
So my co-author and I weren't able to continue. But I really liked that. I enjoyed writing that too. And I enjoyed writing with someone else, because we just kind of meshed. We kind of clicked. Our writing styles were the same. We're very much the same. So it was fun to do it. And that was interesting too, because that character was a siren. And she was one of the original sirens. And she was cursed to live as a human because she lost the daughter of a god. So, she didn't lose him. Hades was able to take this goddess when they were supposed to be kind of protecting her. So she's cursed to live as a human, and never find love. So, and of course she does, because there wouldn't be any drama if she didn't really, if she didn't find love when she wasn't supposed to find love. So
She's supposed to, right, yeah.
Right. And that's the closest thing to romance that I've ever written. And of course my Samantha, my co-author, who is the S of S.J. Harper, Samantha Summersby, she writes romance. So wrote romance. I don't think she's writing right now, but she wrote romance. So we had kind of a different slant on things, and it was fun because I would take sample chapters to my writers group in Denver. I had a great writers group. I loved it. And they always knew which ones Samantha wrote because she wrote the sex scenes.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Nobody thought I could write a sex scene. So they always said, okay, that's Samantha's. We know she wrote that. So yeah, it was fun. But it was fun.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That is funny. Now, and that's something that has always fascinated me. I've asked the question a few different times of different writing teams, and I know it's that the whole process is approached somewhat differently from person to person. How did you and Samantha do that?
Well, first of all, we sat down and we outlined the entire book, and but not an outline like you would do in school. We actually did it, chapter by chapter, scene by scene. And so she would start maybe with the first chapter, and I would take the second chapter because we had everything plotted out, so we knew what they were going to be. And she would write one, and I would write one, and then we'd swap them. And so that's how we did it through the whole book. And that just showed to me how alike our writing styles were, that we were able to do that. They meshed. They just meshed. So, we would each make our corrections and stuff, and then we would merge it into the finished product. So that's the way we did it, and it worked for us. It was fun. And yeah, I know that a lot of writing teams do things completely different, but that's the way it worked for Samantha and I. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've asked this of a couple of other teams, and one of them said that was pretty much the way they did it as well. So what you just described. So yeah. But I just find that whole idea and process fascinating.
Well, I was just gonna say you really have to be writing with someone whose style is very much like your own to make that work. But as I said, because we had such a detailed scene by scene outline of where the story was going to go, it made it a lot easier because even that was written in our own style. So it made it really easy to do that, to work like that.
Okay. Now, if either Anna or Emma, or we'll say both of them, but this would probably be in different things, if they could make guest appearances in any other series, what would you like to? Where do you think they should go visit? What do you think would have been a good fit for them?
Well, it's interesting because both of our series were set in San Diego. So, it could be possible that because Emma's an FBI agent in this lifetime, and Anna is a bounty hunter, it could very well be that, that they come in contact because maybe they're after someone that the FBI is tracking down. So, yeah, it could.
They could team up. Yeah, okay.
They could team up, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Maybe that's a future story idea.
Carol, that's a very good idea.
So yeah, how that transpires. I'll be watching, and
Well, you would get credit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, what? Now, this next question actually has a couple of different parts, but it has to
Okay.
do with the personalities of both Anna and Emma. And what would you say is the primary personality characteristic of both of them, or of each of them? What if you had to pick
Gosh,
one main thing about each of them? What would it be?
that's that's a very good question. I think with Emma, it would probably be her desire to save women, because that's what kind of motivates her, is that because of how she found herself in her circumstances. She's I mean, it's not like as an FBI agent that's the only case that she works on, but she always has that in the back of her mind. She's a protector of women. And Anna, um hmm I think Anna's probably I think Anna's best and strongest characteristic is loyalty. She
Mhm.
is loyal to her family. She's loyal to her business partner. And that's very important to her. Loyalty is very important to her. And that kind of governs the way she acts. Um, so yeah, I would think that's probably what I would say their main characteristics are.
Okay. Now, which of their personality traits do you most admire if it's something other than those two things? If those are the things that you also most admire, then you've already answered that part of the question.
No, I think I'd like to be kick-ass.
And they both qualify, yes. Uh, they both qualify for different reasons.
Yeah.
And then what would you say are the ways that they're most alike, the two characters, and how are they most different?
Oh gosh, Carol, you came up with some good questions. Okay. Um, I think they're both alike in their um, devotion to their jobs. Maybe is the way I should say it. In their not devotion, but um, it's important to both of them to do their jobs well. So for Emma, it's the
Dedication.
FBI. Pardon me, dedication.
Dedication, maybe, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Um, and differences. Well, Anna's not afraid to fall in love, and Emma isn't supposed to fall in love. So that's the big difference there. Anna can fall in love. Emma isn't supposed to, even though she does. So that's I think that's the main difference in them, because Anna's she's a sexual being. She's a sexual being, and she pretty much throughout the series has a man in her life in one way or another.
Right, in
So
various degrees of seriousness, but yeah, she does.
exactly, yeah. And with Emma, she's been told that she can have sex toys. She can play with men if she wants, but she can't fall in love. She can't fall in love because that's just not going to be allowed. So
Right, I like that, sex toys. Okay.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite installment, like from either or both of the series? Was there a particular book, and I know in the Fallen Siren series there were a couple of, they're longer than novellas, but not quite,
Yeah.
not quite full length novels. So, and you had two of those in addition to the two full length novels, I
Yeah.
believe. And
Gosh. Um. Hmm. One of my favorite books in the Anna series is Crossroads, because it, Crossroads means so many different things
uh
in the book. literally crossroads, but mainly her relationship with some of the other characters in the books. So to me, that was the most serious, maybe, of all of the books was Crossroads. And I'm trying to think now which one. I think maybe the first Emma book.
Cursed.
Um,
Yeah.
Cursed. Yeah, I think Cursed is my favorite because we were setting up our world. We were setting up our world, and we set it up because we really thought we'd have more time to play in it. So,
Right.
yeah, I think Cursed and Crossroads are my two favorites.
Oh, well, then that'll be easy to remember since they both start with C as well. So, yeah, given how much time you obviously spent on getting all of that set up for the Fallen Siren series, I can see why, that was a really good introduction to the world. I mean, as a reader, I can say that, and it was really pulled you in from the very beginning. Now, kind of the other side of the coin from that, was there one of your books that proved like particularly difficult to write for some reason? That it was just there was the subject matter or the
Well, I think I would have to say the third and the fourth, which was the Watcher and the Legacy in the Anna series, and only because when I got my contract with Penguin, the vampire series, the vampire fires were burning brightly. They wanted vampire books out fast. So whereas I had a lot of time to write The Becoming because I wrote it before it was published, before I got a publisher,
right.
and Blood Drive I had a year to write, I only had 6 months to write The Watcher and Legacy. And because they wanted to bring the books out 6 months, every 6 months they wanted to bring one out, which sounds really good as far as readers are concerned. It's great for readers, but it was really hard for me because I wasn't like Joss Whedon. I didn't have 10 seasons already mapped out. So I had to come up with the plots for those two books really fast. And if I'm honest, I think those are my weakest books. And I think it's because I didn't have the time to really write it the way I wanted to write it. So I've always thought if I ever get my rights back, but I don't know if I ever will because, publishers, as long as they're selling one book, they're going to keep your rights.
They won't give it back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the good news, bad news. They're still selling. So that's a good thing. But on the other hand, I would love to be able to rewrite those two books. If I ever got the rights back, I would rewrite those two books. That's one thing I would do. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and it must have been, pretty much a shock to your system too, to go from having, the luxury of a bit more time to all of a sudden having half of that.
Exactly.
And you were still fairly new at the whole thing. So just trying to get into the rhythm, that must have been tough. So
yeah, it was a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And as I said, I think those are my two weakest books. I think actually, I'd like somebody out there to say, "Oh no, those are your best," but they're not.
Well, but look at it this way: if you didn't get the response from readers saying, "Gee, this seemed rushed," or anything like that, then you managed to hide it from us. I know I didn't have that impression when I read them, even though it was, several years ago. I can tell you that, but it's always interesting to hear what it was like behind the curtain, so to speak.
And it's funny too because I don't know any writer. Well, maybe I do know of a couple of writers who probably do this, but I don't know any writer who says, "I just wrote the perfect book."
Oh, I know. Yeah.
There's nothing I could do. The only author I ever heard of that said that he never rewrote was Robert B. Parker. And he said he never, ever rewrote a book. He wrote a book and he sent it to his publisher, and that was it. So I
Wow.
know.
Yeah, that's pretty. And that, not to mention, that is the perfect segue into my next question. I'll just let anybody who watches this video know this was not planned. That the segue was not planned by us, but you had mentioned earlier, back in the very beginning, that you were really into mystery and suspense. That this was this was kind of your thing. So that was one of my questions, is because it always plays such an important part in your work, that that I was curious whether that was a lifelong interest of yours. And was that from an early age? I mean, it sounds as though it was from what you had said earlier.
Yeah, of course. My first love in books was, were the Black Stallion books. I mean, those were the horse. I was a horse.
Yeah,
I was a horse girl. Horse girl. I can see if Mario's out there, he's going, oh yeah, right. She was a horse girl. Anyway, but then I got into like the Carolyn Keene and the I'm drawing a blank. What is the girl's? It's being reviewed.
Belden, maybe Trixie Belden, maybe.
No, not Trixie Belden. Oh, well, it'll come to me. That's the problem with getting old, Carol. I forget things. But there were a lot of mystery series that were written for kids.
Oh yeah, there were. I agree, because I used to read them as well.
Yeah, and those kind of things. But when I really, and then as an adult living in San Diego, I joined a mystery readers club, a mystery book club that was hosted by the most wonderful bookstore in San Diego. It was called Mysterious Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
Mysterious Galaxy is wonderful, but I've said this wrong, because that was not my first. The first was Grounds for Murder, and Phyllis Brown, who was well known in the literary community. That was her bookshop. And it was my first introduction to meeting real authors, because she had people like Sarah Paretsky, Robert B. Parker, the ABC, wrote the ABC series.
Sue Grafton.
All of these people, when their first books came out. So I had first books of all of these.
Oh, wow.
Who became famous, over time. But that really got me so interested in mysteries and mystery writers, and the way, and what their routines were and how they wrote. And of course, they all said the same thing. When people ask you, how do you become a writer? You write. That's how you do. Yeah. So it really, not only did it open my imagination and my mind up to all these wonderful writers, but their books just drew me right in. So I was just drawn in like a magnet, and because of that book club, I think that really sparked my interest in writing. That was the first spark that I had interest in writing. And again, as I said, then it was straight mysteries. I thought I would just write straight mysteries. So, and I have a couple of those that are, like everybody says, the trunk novels.
Right. The one that's in the drawer, the top drawer.
Right.
Yeah. So, who knows? Maybe one of those will surface at some point in time, huh?
It's so much fun, Carol, because, and I credit Dragon Con with this too, and you, because at Dragon Con, I mean, I've been to a lot of the big conferences. I've been to, the San Diego Comic Con. I've been to when RT had their conferences mentioned. But Dragon Con is the only con, I think, where you bring together so many authors of so many different tracks, sci-fi, fantasy, everything. And it's wonderful because these writers are also approachable. That's the thing I find just magnificent about this. That you can talk to them. You can talk to them. Well, that's why I tell people who ask me what my favorite conference. It's always been Con, it always will be Dragon Con, because it's fun. It's fun, and you get to go to the bar and you see your favorite writer sitting there, yeah, or James Marsters. You get to look at James Marsters.
And you could probably even talk to him.
I saw your little video.
So the cameo that was sent, yeah, wasn't that nice? Yes, that was quite a surprise. It was a very a lovely thing for those two ladies to have done, and I will always be forever appreciative. I was thinking about that just today, actually. I was like, oh, it may be time to post that again soon, but
I think you should.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that each of the Anna novels pretty much had a human mystery going on at the same time as there's something to do. One of the was something in the supernatural world going on as well. Whether or not they cross, there's something, usually both kinds going on. And my question for you was actually about that was something that you typically did, and did you find it difficult to merge those two aspects? I mean, most urban fantasy has some kind of a suspense or mystery component involved anyway. Not necessarily to the same extent that yours do. And so I'm just wondering, did you, how difficult is it to get those two aspects to merge correctly? Take a lot of extra effort on your part?
Well, sometimes it did. But sometimes the stories just lended themselves to it. And the example that I'll give you is in one of the books, and don't ask me which ones because I won't remember. In one of the books, Anna's boyfriend at the time was named Max, and he was a DEA agent. And he learned of that Anna was actually a vampire. He learned, and when he learned that, he couldn't cope with it, and so he broke up. They broke up. But later he came back to her to ask her help because they knew that there was a coyote out there that was a vampire that was draining. They would tell people they were going to get them across the border, but actually they would lure them out to the desert and drain them. So he came to Anna to ask her to help catch this guy, which she did. So that was an easy setup. A lot of them didn't merge. They were completely, kind of completely separate. But that one was an easy setup. So sometimes they were easy, and sometimes they were either not, or they didn't merge at all. So,
well, and what I guess really what. Even if the two stories weren't necessarily connected, the two aspects going on, was it difficult to kind of get the, when you've got a story where the premise is basically a supernatural setting, I mean, that, or a supernatural premise, and then to try to inject, and you can do it in urban fantasy more readily than you can with others. But did you find it like, say, for example, in Blood Bond, there are two very different mysteries going on. You've got the person who wants to become a vampire and expose the vampire world if she doesn't get her way, and then you've got the person who stole all the money, which I won't go into details because we don't want to. So, you've got two things that are not connected. But all I can say is that after reading that book, or while reading that book, I was like, Anna, charge your phone. Charge your phone, because
I know.
that would be like the greatest advice I could give to her as a character.
That's what Frey kept saying to her. Charge your damn phone.
Exactly.
You know what,
So
Carol, I'm gonna move over a little bit because I just realized I need to plug my computer in, or we're gonna get cut off.
All of a sudden, it's going to.
Yeah, I'm getting the red, the little red thing there that says "charge me." See if I got
right.
I'm in my little office space here, which is unfortunately not very organized. So let's see if I can do this. All right.
That's okay. Everybody's getting a look at your lovely wall there too, in the window.
It's kind of, all right. Let's see if this. All right. Oh shoot, that didn't work. All right. I'm sorry, Carol. I should have been much better prepared. I could have brought a what do you call it, an extension in if I thought of it. But there we go. All right, now you got me. Okay.
All right, there you are. You are back. All right, I can see you. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you are writing something completely different, and it's what I refer to as sailing and sci-fi.
You're right.
Yeah, and please tell us a bit about the series and how it came about.
Yeah, well, when I was living in Denver, I became friends with this wonderful family, and Jim had said, I have been working on this book for like 20 years. He's one of those guys who's been working on a book for 20 years. And because he knew I was a writer and published, he thought, would you help me with it? And so, of course, when I first got the book, he had made all the mistakes that first writers do. The first like 100 pages was just all backstory.
Right.
Where they came from and what. So we fixed it. But it's been really fun. Now our styles are completely different, so it's not like Sam and I, where it was so easy. Can you see me?
Yeah.
It's so dark back here. I'm sorry that this screwed up. So I took his book apart, and then we started writing it together. And what we would do is you'd do some pages, and then he'd send them to me, and then I would edit them and give them back to him. So we've done 2 books now. Let me grab these over here. The second book in the series is called Repel All Borders. I don't know if you can even see that. 180 degree.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. And it just became available. It's just now on Amazon and the different things. But Jim is a sailor, and his knowledge of sailing and his love of sailing really comes through in these pages. It's just been fun. It's been a lot of fun. So, and I see a lot of Jim in the character Reed, who's one of the main characters. But he had this whole trilogy. It'll be a trilogy. He had them all plotted out already. All 3 books plotted out. So the first one came out, and then we just finished the second one. And we're actually now working on the third book. But it's a sailing, sci-fi, alien kind of mash.
Okay.
But it's fun. It's really fun, and he is such a good guy that it's been a pleasure to work with him. It's been a pleasure to work with him. So.
Yeah, well, that's great that he had, the base already. Yes. And had things plotted out and knew what he wanted to do. So that's a good start. And the fact that you're doing it, the process, it sounds as though the process is somewhat similar to what you did with Samantha, but it's also, you guys are so different.
Right.
Probably making it kind of interesting too.
And what's fun too, Carol, is watching him develop as a writer.
Oh,
because, the first chapters that when we first started writing this. I mean, there were a lot of edits. And the last few chapters that I just sent back to him today, I think, were 4 chapters, and I think I only had like 20 edits in the whole.
Oh, wow.
He's really developed. I told him, matter of fact, I told him my email, he's pretty soon he's not going to need me anymore. But he said, no, I'm going to keep you around. Okay.
Now, did he have the sci-fi elements included in the story prior to your involvement? I mean, was this something that?
Yes, this was his plot completely. This is his
Oh,
plot.
okay.
Yeah, he'd come up with it. But I don't want to give too much away. But it's
we don't want to tell us too much. We will just get the interest peaked. Yes.
Yes, and it's 180 Degrees Magnetic is the name of the book. And through the first book, you understand what that means if you're not a sailor. And I didn't know what that was, but now I do.
Good. Okay. Well, see, everybody learns a little bit of something on this working together.
Well, and it keeps me writing chops too going. It gives me a reason to be writing. So that's good.
There you go. It's good. Yeah, it's good practice and honing your skills along the way as well.
Exactly.
Now, you had talked about some of the authors that you've always enjoyed, in the past, but who do you feel as though were probably the most influential writers for you and upon your own work, and just maybe not stylistically, but just people that you emulate?
Well, he's not a writer of novels per se, but Joss Whedon, I think, is always because of the way he plots, because of his story arcs. They're so complete, and because of the way he develops his characters. And as far as dialogue is concerned, I mentioned it before, Robert B. Parker, to me, is a master of dialogue. He's passed away now, but he told his whole books were mainly told in dialogue. And it was wonderful because he fashioned his words so that he didn't have to describe. He didn't have any adjectives or adverbs. The words themselves told you whether someone was happy or sad or mad or whatever their emotion was. The way they spoke told you exactly what it was. And I don't think I've read anybody else that came close to him as far as dialogue. And I try to emulate that. I try to to make my dialogue as crisp and as realistic as I possibly can. So I think those are I would say are two. I think the other one, as far as the idea of urban fantasy, is Charlene Harris. She's the other one, the other author that really influenced me because I loved her. I love her stuff so much, and it was such it used to make me laugh when True Blood became a big hit on HBO, and it was like people were saying, she's an overnight wonder. Charlene Harris had written 3 series before that. She's always been a wonderful writer. So that always kind of made me laugh when I would hear somebody.
Right. Yeah. Well, it does go to show you what media adaptations can do for exposure for people, though. And I remember, and speaking of Charlene, I remember one of the first times that she was at Dragon Con, someone had an audience question and, wanted to know what did she think of everything had been changed around. It's nothing like the books. And she says, actually, Alan Ball doesn't tell me how to write my books, and I don't tell him how to write his TV show. And, that was her philosophy the whole time. And I thought, yeah, well, there you go. And, it certainly brought both of them, greater name.
Right.
Same.
and justifiably so too. That's always a funny thing to me too, because people will say, "Oh, how could you sell your characters?"
Right,
Guess
right, yeah.
yeah,
Let me see. let,
yeah,
let me let me let me check and see if I can come up with an answer for
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. Yes, yes.
Now, and now something I'm also curious about that I like to ask my author guests is when as far as writing habits go, when you're writing, do you prefer to have music or some other kind of background noise going on, or do you want like absolute quiet and nobody bother me and I'm going to be in this very quiet environment by myself for a while? What works best for you?
Yeah. I've never been one that can work with music
Mhm.
because I want to sing. If I
Uh,
get distracted by the music in the background, and I know
right,
lots. Like Carrie Vaughn, has a whole playlist for her books
right.
you know, that she listens to. I can't do that. I can't do that. Now, until my husband retired, I was alone in the house.
Right.
It was easy to be quiet. There was nobody else around. It was just me. So that it's kind of an adjustment to have somebody around all the time. You may
Yeah.
be going through the same thing. Didn't your husband just retire? Did you say? Or
Yes,
has
he
he?
did. And one of my experiences has been, well, he's been doing some stuff. He's always got something going on. He's very much a do-it-yourself kind of person. He's always working on the house and, you know, fixing this other thing. And during actual Dragon Con, I was right before the this past Dragon Con weekend. I was doing a pre-recorded panel with Patricia Briggs. And,
Ah,
he was right above me in the attic hammering, even
oh,
though, even though he knew that's what I was doing. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have my phone with me to be trying to surreptitiously text him and say,
yeah,
"What the heck are you doing?" So I'd have
not,
myself while Patty was talking, and luckily you couldn't really hear it in the finished product. So I was, I was very but now I know that something that fans can look forward to you is booked through in the 180 Degrees Magnetic series. Um,
yes.
and, maybe we'll eventually get a story, where even if it's only, like a novella or something where Anna and Emma team up, I think that would be awesome. Um,
I think that would be too. That's a very good idea.
Yeah,
That's a very
so we'll have to see if that works out, and keep us apprised of any other good stuff that you have going on or coming up, and um, your social media uh, information and your professional email are included in the description of this panel, so that have any questions for you about the books or who just want to write to you and tell you how wonderful they are or that you are, then I hope that they will make use of those. But I do want to thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Jeanne, and doing this. I know, it's a weird time for everybody, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope
well,
that. Go
no,
ahead.
I have to say thank you for asking me, because this is a treat, as it always is to talk with you, because you make it so easy. And
Oh, well, thank you.
my hope is that we get to be roomies come this Labor
Right.
Day at Dragon Con again.
Yes, let's keep our fingers crossed because
Yes.
that would be ideal. And I'd like to thank all of our viewers. We've had some people watching along with us, and we do appreciate you being here. And anyone who has questions for Jane, go ahead and you can leave them, or you can send them to those places that are listed in the description. Or if you have comments on, the panel itself, certainly you can do that here on YouTube or on the Facebook post that I shared on the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track page, and you have it on, I believe you have it on your personal page as well, Jeanne, the link to the panel. So we'd be happy to have you share that, any information there. And also, just to let people know what's coming up in February, we for our virtual programming for the track, we have coming up at the beginning of February a fan panel over the Netflix show Ragnarok, which we did not get to during actual DragonCon because we were under some time constraints. And then we also will have, in the middle of the month, we will have a Meet the Authors panel using some individuals that I did not get to use on DragonCon programming. I'm going to be featuring some of them. And at the end of the month, we will begin our Supernatural Rewind series, which is a monthly panel discussing, various seasons of the show, and we're going to start with season 1 at the end of February. So we hope people will join us for those. All of those will be live panels, so people can either watch them while they're happening or join us later. In any case, again, Jeanne, thank you very much. I want to thank you to all of our viewers and fans who've been watching these different videos. And thanks very much, everyone. And we will say goodbye. Jeanne, it's been a pleasure to see you, my dear.
Oh, yes, me too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.